We're joined now by Dr. Shlomo Gensler, who's a volunteer doctor in the area who I believe, as that woman was talking about, has seen things that even he, and has a lot of experience, has not seen in his life. Is that fair? Tell us about the last few days, if you can.
Yeah, so the last few days have been very trying days. It basically, as everyone knows, it started this past Saturday. I was spending time at where I live in Jerusalem and work in a major hospital in Jerusalem. I was spending some quality time with my family when I found out about there was a couple missile strikes, and I found out that there was an attack down south. Initially, this organization, which is one of the main emergency medical services here in Israel, a purely volunteer, called me and asked me if I'd be able to give advice to people that were trapped down south. Initially, I picked up the phone and I dialed one of the numbers that was given to me to speak to a family, and I spoke to the daughter of an individual that basically had his hands and legs, and sorry for the graphic details, but I think it's important to understand the context, their hands and legs blown off with multiple bullet wounds in their father. And they basically were begging for any way to get transport. I made sure that they had these tourniquets that were placed on them, and that basically to try to assist them with any medical intervention. I then called the military to see if there was anything to do about it. Unfortunately, they said there's nothing that they could do to handle it. I had to unfortunately inform the family there was nothing that we could do at that time, which is extremely distressing. Shortly thereafter, they called me and asked me if I'd be willing to go down and try and assist as much as I can. And I had no idea what I'd be in for, but honestly, what I encountered was honestly carnage and war crime atrocities. It was the most tragic thing I've witnessed. I mean, I'm a doctor, an intensive care doctor, and I've seen lots of things in my lifetime, but I've never seen this so much, lack of caring for other human beings in the way that they treated anybody they came in contact with. Initially, when I got there, I came to the staging point of where we were, which was before they basically set up a checkpoint as a place to fend off from invading terrorists. We subsequently decided to go in slowly but surely. We encountered our first dead body that we did not realize that would be one of the first of many hundreds that we would encounter. And at that point, we took the body out, and then we went and we put it back at the staging point, went further in, and then we just witnessed utter carnage and very, very difficult sights. Yeah. That I wish no one to have to see or to experience. There were civilian cars all over the place with people executed in the street, piles of bodies next to their cars. We then went further in and started to render treatment to anybody that would come to us, whether it was soldiers, whether it was civilians. And we encountered many, many very, very difficult sites.
Let me ask you about one specific part of that, if I can, and that is that, and by the way, I agree with you that it's important to get these details out, as graphic or as difficult as they may be to talk about and look at as they are. And one of the things that they're, from people looking in from places like the United States or the outside, there's been a lot of back and forth about reports of how these Hamas terrorists treated children in particular. What would you say about what you saw? You were there.
What I would say to that is, and I know this from firsthand, and I can tell you like one story that I encountered myself. I mean, I know they were executing kids, and I've seen the bodies of kids. That's number one. The other thing is I encountered kids that were hidden in a closet, and they had watched their parents be executed in front of them, and they were able to slip away quickly and hide in a shelter. And they were there for 14 hours. And after they got freed and they were brought out, basically the grandmother came to where our staging point was and asked us if we could help them. We put them in contact with the Army. The Army rescued them, then brought them to us, and I was able to speak to them. And they basically told me, and this part made me cry, and it was incredibly difficult, that I watched my parents killed in front of me, have not eaten in the last 12 hours. And that was very difficult. On a note to give a better picture, my cousin was at this party that was on the border at that time, and she witnessed atrocities as they came down in their paragliders, basically mowing down people and laughing as they did it. And then she described that she saw the bodies jumping as they were riddled with bullets. And then just to add on to that, afterwards, I've had a lot of friends who are dealing with a lot of the dead bodies afterwards that have seen kids' heads decapitated and also stabbed to death as well in many brutal different ways.
You're telling an important story, but I think more important You're doing such important work. So, Doctor, keep it up, and thank you very much for coming on with us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for the time. I really appreciate it.
That's Dr. Shlomo Gensler, who's been volunteering, works in Jerusalem, but been volunteering in the southern part of the country.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.